Okay, so we've gone over the negative effects of growth hormone use and abuse, but now let's look at why you would want to use it, specifically as a sport supplement. So what is it? Growth hormone, or somatotropin, is a peptide hormone that is synthesized and secreted by the pituitary gland. It works mainly, as the name suggests, to stimulate and regulate growth in the body, most notably in children who grow before and during puberty, much more than adults do in their entire existence. As well as growing, growth hormone promotes an environment which fosters the growth and development of muscle tissue and the loss or reduction of fat tissue. It also maintains blood glucose levels and promotes a healthy lipid profile for things like cholesterol in the blood. But the main overall goal of growth hormone is to ensure enough nutrients are supplied to all of the cells involved for efficient ATP synthesis, using glucose as energy for the cells to work, and protein synthesis, which is basically the building block for anything in the body. So with this quite wide range of responsibilities and functions, you can see that growth hormone is a pretty powerful and potentially dangerous hormone to mess around with. So how can we stimulate growth hormone to be released in the body? In a few ways. Primarily, the release of growth hormone is controlled by another hormone called GHRH, or growth hormone releasing hormone. Stimulation can also occur through ghrelin, another hormone which sits in the stomach and sends signals to the brain that the body is hungry. So you can see a little growth system in place here. The ghrelin tells the body that it needs to eat, and at the same time stimulates the release of growth hormone to prepare the internal environment to put that incoming food to use as soon as possible. And then conversely, the release of growth hormone is inhibited by the presence of growth hormone itself. So it's sort of a self-limiting system to ensure you don't end up with excess levels circulating. And this releasing process happens in pulses every 3 to 5 hours, rather than being a constant stream, with the levels secreted being highest during stress, exercise, low blood glucose levels, and the vast majority being during deep sleep, which may be why teenagers during the frenzy of growth during puberty are so oriented towards sleep, and it's why sleep is so vital to recover from training and so very important for fat loss. So as to actions, when released into the bloodstream, growth hormone can act in a few places. Growth hormone binds to the receptors in the fat tissue, the skeletal muscle, the bones, and the liver. And then at these different receptor sites, the growth hormone has a variety of actions. In the fat tissue, it stimulates lipolysis, which is the breaking down of triglycerides in the fat tissue into fatty acids and releasing those into the bloodstream. And if glucose is not available, these broken down fatty acids can be used as fuel instead. So there you can see one reason that having very active levels of growth hormone in the body would lead to lower levels of body fat, since it is being constantly broken down and utilized rather than being stored and not released. And this being in an environment with low glucose in the bloodstream is why intermittent fasting and fasted cardio is often spoken about in conjunction with growth hormone, since the body has no food or glucose to fuel it after fasting, so the source theoretically has to be drawn from the fat cells. So then the liver. The liver is a major player in releasing glucose into the bloodstream, and growth hormone signals the liver to begin the formation of glucose, which is then dumped into the bloodstream for fuel. And alongside this glucose production, growth hormone increases the amount of glucose and amino acids that the muscles and bones are able to absorb for the process of protein synthesis, as well as increasing the levels of protein synthesis in those bones and muscles. So with this increased fuel supply and ability, the growth of muscle through protein synthesis is drastically improved in the presence of growth hormone. But remember, this is simply talking about the natural production of growth hormone, nothing abnormal. As well as this, in bones, growth hormone is responsible for bone mineral density, and you can see that in people who abuse growth hormone, the bones become very dense, and in people who lack growth hormone, which you can see in children and as people age, the bones become more fragile and brittle, so taking growth hormone at these points would counteract this. So from the fat cells and the liver, growth hormone signals the release of fuel for the body to function, and from the muscles and bones, growth hormone regulates the rate and ability to use that fuel and process it into new tissue, But the liver has another action in response to growth hormone, the release of IGF, specifically for us IGF-1. IGF stands for insulin-like growth factor, which simply means that the form of the hormone is similar to insulin, allowing the IGFs to bind to the insulin receptors just like insulin would. And IGF-1, just like growth hormone, increases the uptake of glucose and amino acids in cells, as well as increasing the rate and level of protein synthesis. But also, if the levels of IGF in the blood are too high, then IGF can signal back to the pituitary gland to halt the production of further growth hormone. So, to sum it up, growth hormone increases the amount of glucose available in the bloodstream through lipolysis, breaking down fat into fuel, and through gluconeogenesis and glycogenolysis in the liver, and then alongside that, increases the ability for cells, especially muscle and bone, to utilize that glucose and amino acids for the process of protein synthesis. So you can see how this is a very important hormone for the process of growth in the body. So what is the benefit of using exogenous sources? The body is agnostic when it comes to hormones. So if you inject testosterone or growth hormone, as far as the body is aware, you have just begun to release more than you had done before. And if this was the case, that your excess amount was through some natural stimulation, the body would have the countermeasures in place to bring those levels back down into the ordinary standard range most of the time. But the body cannot prevent you from injecting more and more, so you can either maximize natural levels or exceed them. But, as we said, the body is agnostic to this kind of thing, and while growth hormone can encourage positive growth, it can also promote all kinds of other growth, like cancer, which we discussed in the previous video. But for the athlete, there are a few main benefits. First, lower fat, which means that the athlete will be composed of more functional mass, meaning mass that performs a direct action in the sport. Especially in sports with weight categories, with skill and other attributes aside, if we had two 100-kilogram arm wrestlers, and yes, this is simplifying things, not factoring in other tissue that makes up body mass, but if one was 90 kilograms of lean muscle tissue with just 10 kilograms of fat, so 10% body fat, and the other was 50 kilograms of lean muscle tissue with 50 kilograms of fat, so 50% body fat, in terms of strength and power, the athlete with an extra 40 kilograms of muscle is going to have much greater potential. Second, with the increased supply of glucose and the enhanced ability to convert that glucose into ATP and perform protein synthesis, an athlete using growth hormones, just like steroids, is going to be able to process new muscle at a much greater rate, so he could be leaner and more muscular. But it is important to note that growth hormone, as we said before, is self-limiting, so it's not quite a case of taking more growth hormone for more muscle growth overall. Most of the process and benefits we've covered so far have been in reference to standard healthy levels of growth hormone. Taking excess levels of growth hormone alone will do very little to encourage the growth of excess muscle tissue. It's possible that supplementing growth hormone by itself would allow someone to max out their natural abilities, but for the excess growth, other agents need to be involved, by which we mean anabolic steroids, which by themselves enhance the body's capacity to grow without the self-limiting factors that growth hormone imparts aside from receptor saturation. It makes more sense to think of the two things as something like a symbiotic couple. The growth hormone on the one hand maximizes the conditions within the body to grow, even going so far as to grow new cells, preparing them for training later on. And then the anabolic steroids work to enhance on top of this maximally efficient environment. So steroids alone would work better to enhance an athlete beyond natural abilities in terms of size and strength, and growth hormone alone would work better to maximize the perhaps natural abilities that the body contains. But put them both together and you get maximally enhanced creatures. But at the professional level athlete, it is pretty well understood how to do things most of the time. So I don't think there is much discrepancy between what the different athletes at the level take. One thing which a lot of people overlook, but is one of the major elements that set aside the enhanced athletes from the naturals, is the work capacity. In the case of growth hormone, the athlete has much more glucose at hand to fuel their training, whether that's long sessions of aerobic training like marathons or the short bursts of intensity like weight training. So a growth hormone enhanced athlete is literally able to do more exercise than the natural, and then receive a greater stimulus from that, all while remaining in an environment much more ready and able to synthesize new protein. They are able to train more, get more, and grow more from the training. So even with a non-ideal system, a growth hormone enhanced athlete will be able to reap much more reward from whatever they do than a natural person training even everything optimally. Bone density. An athlete, especially an athlete for strength and power, benefits tremendously from having dense, strong bones. Even with the natural athlete, bone density increases is seen as a side effect of heavy and consistent training. So you can assume through correlation that having dense bones helps heavy and consistent training. The bones which act as anchor points for muscles and tendons to connect to are more stable and much less vulnerable to injury or complete breaks. And in arm wrestling specifically, having these stronger, denser bones are going to really help to combat bone fractures, which we know happen in the sport. Sleep and general life quality. As we said before, growth hormone maximizes the body's ability to function at an optimal level. So for an athlete who wants every possible edge, having the body able to function in daily activities without worrying about extra stress and being able to sleep deeply alongside enhanced training really helps to tie together the whole package of being one of the top athletes at the enhanced level. And with growth hormone promoting enhanced abilities for cells to act, repair of injuries is improved too, as the cells responsible for the repairing will have a much greater supply of fuel and will be able to do their job around the clock, rather than waiting for the next natural wave of nutrients. As we said earlier, the bones are enhanced with growth hormone, but at the ends of each bone sits cartilage, the connective tissue which helps to hold the joints together, and growth hormone regulates cartilage growth, helping it to become stronger and more resilient, which in many sports is a huge advantage to withstanding the abnormal forces applied to the joints, especially in sports like arm wrestling where the joints are challenged directly. So unlike anabolic steroids, which primarily target the muscle tissues, growth hormone opens the window for the entire spectrum of force-producing systems to be grown and strengthened. And in the case of growth hormone abuse, these systems can be developed to tremendous levels that cannot really be compared to the unenhanced, even the most elite, natural genetics. You can train more, you can eat more, you can recover more. You don't have to worry as much about not doing everything perfectly, and you are more resilient to damage, and if you do receive damage, you recover faster. By itself, growth hormone will not do much except make you exist a little more optimally, and the higher you push the doses, the less results you will see and the more side effects will begin to rear their heads. But in combination with anabolic steroids, the ability to gain muscle and train better is massively enhanced, just as long as you are willing to stick with it for the long haul. Anabolic steroids can take a few hours, days or weeks for the effects to be visible, but for the more athletic-focused benefits of growth hormone, like developing entirely new muscle tissue through hyperplasia, the process can take months before you visibly notice a difference. The cells will form, but they will be small and essentially useless, unlike the ones you already had throughout your life, which with general hypertrophy you are just increasing the size of. These new cells require training and may take longer than the length of a cycle to be seen, so many people will say that growth hormone did nothing on cycle, even that they made more gains in muscle tissue after coming off the hormone. So yes, growth hormone does work very well, and it also brings a large number of side effects, and it's very expensive, especially at the doses which people are supposedly claiming to be pushing, which are often far in excess of the 8 to 10 IUs, which are generally accepted to be the upper limit of efficacy. And that's about all there is to say about growth hormone. But on the subject of growth, my Patreon subscriber base has grown from 1 to 3. Accompanying Jacob are 2 new faces, Monty PR and Big K. And these 2 now have access to the content I post on Patreon, which coming later this week perhaps will be a full 1 month training plan for the gym, strength training focused towards arm wrestling. But if you are interested in content like that and access to exclusive Patreon channels in the Discord server, go and sign up to Patreon. But otherwise, that's all I have to say, and I'll see you next time.